Well, hello folks, it's David Connolly here, the web developer extraordinaire. A few days ago I posted a video that I called The Hidden Genius of Trongate's underscore naming convention. This was a 36-minute video in which I went into a lot of the nuts and bolts of OOP, and I tried my best to clear up a few misconceptions, particularly regarding the underscore first naming convention. So, if you missed that, basically I was explaining why we do things the way that we do things in Trongate. And I was making the point that this is just a simple Trongate module. Here we have a method, of course. And I was making the point that if we want to prevent methods from being invoked via the URL, we can simply add in this underscore here. So you can see this here with this method that is called in you go. Okay, fair enough. So this has led to a little bit of misunderstanding, and funnily enough, it's one of these topics that even if you spoke to ChatGPT about this, as I have, there's a whole lot of misunderstanding about this. And ChatGPT will tell you, and a lot of developers will tell you, that the underscore first naming convention, like this here, makes methods private. So it's the same as saying this, okay? And that's what people think. However, it turns out that this is not the case at all. Doing this underscore first thing does not make the method private. The method can still be accessed from other modules. So if we take this little in you go thing here, right, I'm going to just copy that. And let me just do a site-wide search for in you go. Okay, so there's an interesting thing. If I go to this account module, now who knows what this is to do with? I don't even know. But it's another module altogether. And here it is. It's loading up the members module and it's invoking in you go. Now, whatever this is for, and who knows, but whatever this is for, I can assure you that this class, which is called account, is an entirely independent class from members. There's no, one of them extends the other, one of them inherits from the other. There's nothing like that going on here. So, members and account are two entirely distinct and separate PHP classes. They may both be extended from Trongate, just as human beings may be, who knows, descended from apes, let's say. And I don't know if they are or not, but let's just humour me for a minute, right? But even if that's the case, I'm still a distinct and separate human being from you. Do you see what I'm saying? Anyway, the upshot of the video, and I'm saving you a whole lot of time here, is that when you leave out the access modifier, such as public, private, or protected, PHP naturally assumes public. So when we have a little method with a name like in you go, this is the same as saying public function in you go. It's exactly the same. Now, looking at the comments, in fact, I'm not going to show any names because it will look as if I'm having a go at people and I'm not, But the response has been reasonably positive, but one or two of you are still a little bit confused by this, I think. And somebody had said, if you don't want a method to be accessed from another class, then you should be making it private. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. But the thing is, you do realize that in Trongate, you can go like this. Here's a little method here, right? And you do realize that you can very easily just say private, and it'll work just fine. There's nothing whatsoever stopping you from doing that. Now, I'm going to save you a whole lot of time and thought and effort here and tell you that when you're dealing with Trongate modules, your methods are either going to be public or they're going to be private. I am fully aware of what protected methods are and what they mean, and I think there's a few of them in the engine directory. But I cannot imagine a situation where you would use a protected method inside a Trongate class, at least not in a main controller file like this. So all of your methods with Trongate are either going to be public or they're going to be private. And if you want your thing to not be accessible via the URL, just chuck in a little underscore. But if you have this as public, it means that it can be invoked from another entirely separate module. By the way, if you did this private function Ahoy, in fact, let me demonstrate this. Shall we do a little demo? All right, so this is our forum build, and I'll just show you. Okay, so we're going to have members Ahoy, and you can see that it says whatever, okay? So public is available everywhere, can be called from any module, any place, anywhere. It's wide open, right? If you don't want this to be something that can be invoked via the URL, you can add in an underscore, and if we save and refresh, we get this not found page here, and it's entirely because we've got this underscore here. However, if we made this private and save and refresh, you'll also not get anything coming up. Now, maybe we could work with this and build a nice 404 page or something like that. I'm not sure whether that would be appropriate. But the point is, yes, you can actually prevent methods from being invoked by saying private or even protected. So the key takeaway is, when you use the underscore method, you're not actually making the thing private. It's public. It has to be public. And all that's happening is inside the framework, there's a little bit of code that says, is the first character of the method an underscore? And if it is, or the first character of the method name an underscore, and if it is, then just give them a 404 not found page. It's as simple as that. Now, the alternative to this is some type of miserable configuration option. I understand that with Symfony, they like to use YAML files, and I believe Laravel is doing a similar type of thing. Both of those frameworks, incidentally, are approximately 20 times slower than Trongate. Not only that, but isn't it nice to know that you can just build stuff without worrying about configurations? I mean, you know, if you can understand the concept, put an underscore and the first character here of the method name, and you can't invoke it via the URL. If you can understand that, then everything is just fine. But I suppose there's really three main things that I wanted to hammer home with this slightly patronizing video here. And the first thing is, it's okay to use public, private, and protected with Trongate. You can still use that. If somebody is a purist, let's say, in fact, public, private, and protected is all over the engine. I could find any random file from the engine. This is the inner workings of the framework. Look, I'll choose a random class. Let's say, for example, the image class, right? And look, private, 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 public, public. There's a protected, see? And a whole lot of thought has gone into this stuff. So we use all of that stuff in the internals of the framework. It's there, and it's as proper as you get. For the modules, I personally don't use public, private, and protected. I just use the underscore method exclusively, but that's my own personal choice. That's just my own coding preference. For you, it's okay to use public, private, and protected with Trongate. You're not missing out on a thing, and you're certainly not being asked to stop doing something that you don't like if you see value in this type of stuff. I hope that's clear. Second thing, it's just a little top tip. And the top tip is, with Trongate modules, you'll probably never use protected. At least if you do, I cannot imagine a situation where that would be useful. So with Trongate modules, you'll probably only ever use public and private. It's just because of the way it's been built, you know. The third thing, and this is the bit that gets interesting, is let's have a vote. Now, I've already told you what my own preferences are. As far as the framework goes, I mean, I can click anywhere. You're not going to catch us out. Everything is as solid as a rock. Look at it. Private, static, function. See, we know even all about that stuff. You can see we've got return types, type hinting, doc blocks, all of this you see throughout every single function and method within the engine directory. And that really is the Trongate framework. But it's the modules, these files here in the modules directory, this is where the action kicks off. And you are looking at my own preferences here. Now, I can see that some of you folks are still using camel case. I wonder why. Don't you realize that PHP is written predominantly in snake case? Don't you realize that PHP has been written using the C programming language? Think about all of the PHP functions. String replace, there's one. Underscore. I could go to ChatGPT right now and say, give me 10. How about string position? Is that one or is it that? Oh, I'm going to embarrass myself. But there's so many of them and so many that I'm kind of having a bit of stage fright and struggling to list them all. But the fact of the matter is the overwhelming majority of functions within the PHP language are using snake case. So why would you do this? Don't you see that that introduces ambiguity? I mean, think about JavaScript. We've got get element by ID. Or is it get element by ID like that? Is it inner HTML? Or is it inner HTML like that? I could go on and on and on. There's so many of these. And all of this stuff is ambiguity. But you switch to snake case, well, not only are you writing in a syntax that is in alignment with pure PHP, but you've removed ambiguity. Look at get element by ID, zero ambiguity. Inner HTML, inner underscore HTML, zero ambiguity. How many syntax errors are there every single day because somebody chooses the wrong one of these? And these strange inconsistencies are all over JavaScript. I see them all the time with camel case languages. So this is why I like to use snake case. We're trying to give people a framework that feels like pure PHP, kind of like a framework for people who don't like frameworks. So I really don't know why some of you people are out there using camel case still. It's really, really strange. Maybe somebody from PHP Fig told you to do it. Maybe one of your self-appointed masters told you that was what you needed to do. And like a little weasel, you capitulated. Is that what happened? Well, some of us did not capitulate. But anyway, as you can see, this is my coding style here, right? This is just me. However, and by the way, until PHP has more than 50% of the functions written in camel case, we're sticking with snake case. The day that PHP, and it might happen, we have a new PHP foundation on board, seems to me like they're very intent on copying Rust, and I wouldn't be surprised if PHP switched to camel case in the future. Remember, folks, when that happens, the moment we get to over 50% of functions in PHP written in camel case, you give me a call, I'll change the whole framework, the way that we work and everything. But right now, we are nowhere near that stage. That's why we are writing in the style of pure PHP. Now, again, this is my style. Based on what I've observed, and I know that some of you people would do things like this, and some of you people would do that, and some of you people would do that, and some of you people would do that. Fair enough, I get it. Okay, so let's just go through them. The bracket thing is kind of pretty much irrelevant. No developer worth their salt is going to get concerned about that or that, so let's not worry about that. The camel case thing, anybody using camel case for PHP? Well, what can I tell you? I'm rather underwhelmed by your capitulation, by your failure to recognize how robust snake case is, how it eliminates ambiguity, and how it brings PHP into alignment with the very language that PHP was written in. Anyway, do what you want. But this instance, or this business, I should say, of public, private, and protected, which would mean doing something like that, this is actually up for negotiation. This is something that is up for negotiation. Now, personally speaking, I don't have any problems with this. I understand the whole thing. I'm the dude who made the framework, with, of course, a fantastic help from some good friends. But I'm okay either way. What I'm starting to realise, and I mean no offence when I say this, but I think there's a lot of confusion about OOP and about the rules of OOP. Let me clarify the rules. In fact, let me give you the vote, and then you can leave a comment and I'll keep talking, and you can vote right now in the comments, and I'll be watching. And the question in the vote is this: should we start using access modifiers, public, private, and protected? And as I say, you'll probably never use protected across, or with Trongate modules, let's say. We're already using it in the main framework. Should we start using this stuff? Now, I am going to be watching the comments like a hawk. If you think that this represents progress, let me know. I'm not going to, I mean, it's a legitimate point. I think there's a case for doing it. I think that, I mean no offense when I say this, but there's a lot of confused developers who don't understand OOP. Perhaps this will help them. Another thing I've started to realize is that one of the reasons why I never did this is because it's a lot of typing. You know, it's a whole bunch of characters. But if we did introduce something like this, I'm sure I could do a little shortcut. I mean, I have shortcuts for everything, right? So I'm sure I could figure that out, and maybe you could too. So this is the question. Should we start using public, private, and protected with Trongate modules? Now, just as a note, we're still going to need the underscore method. We're going to need it, because the way that Trongate loads other modules, let's say I've got a view file, and we'll bring up my view file here, okay? Or let's say it's just an HTML file. And let's say it's a weight loss club. And one of the things that you see on Weight Watchers Club is a little thing, usually in the top right hand side of the screen. And it will say, we've lost 4, I don't know, tons this week or something. Now with Trongate, you can just go like this and echo modules run, I don't know, weight, draw total lost or something like that, you know. You can do things, in fact, I wouldn't even need that. You can do that with Trongate, single quotes or double, doesn't matter. And it will all just work. If there's another framework that does this, another PHP framework, I don't know about it. Strangely enough, Angular has some stuff that's very, very similar to this. And Angular, thank you for copying me. What took you so long? This is actually a very modern way of coding. And in other frameworks like Angular, they call these things components. We happen to call them modules. It's no big deal, okay? But the point is, if we're going to retain that type of functionality, or even this type of functionality where we say this module, I don't know, another module, and then we invoke something from the other module, let's say like that. If we're going to retain this, then if you really want this to work, this method is going to have to be public. And if you have a problem with it being invoked via the URL, we're going to have to keep that. The only alternative is all of that YAML bullshit. And I'm not doing it. We're just not doing it because we're too far ahead of everybody else. So, have you voted yet? Have you voted yet? Well, as you decide about that, I'm going to give you a little lesson in OOP before I wrap up. And by the way, if anybody's wondering about OOP, I would encourage you to watch my other video, this hidden genius of Trongate's _ naming convention. Some of you are having a hard time coming to terms with my genius. And I know that I'm the guy that you'd never expect to be a genius. I know that. I know I haven't got the accent for it and everything. You take one look at me and you think that dude's got rock and roll all over his face. But in fact, there is hidden genius in this. I messed up with one of the explanations, by the way. I don't even know if it's worth mentioning. But I was demonstrating how if you try and call a protected method in another class, in another module, it's still not going to work. And the way I loaded it was a little bit strange. So I kind of messed up here, but the key point was still valid. So here's everything you need to know about methods in modules. So we're talking about Trongate modules, and here are the methods. This is the part of the video that you really should be paying attention to. So let's have different types of methods. Let's have a method that can be invoked from anywhere. Now, what is anywhere? Well, from the URL, so by visiting a URL, and from another module, from another module's controller or view file, doesn't matter. And I think that's about it, actually, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So from the URL, from another module, potentially from another PHP file somewhere else. But let's just say this example can be invoked from anywhere. So to do that, I'm just going to say public. Let's just call it anywhere, like this. I've just said function rather. So I'm going to just say echo. This can be invoked from anywhere. So another module. Why is that looking a bit strange? It must be. There we go. So this can be invoked from anywhere, okay? And if you want, you can go like this. It's exactly the same thing, and that's what we're voting on. I'm asking, do you want this? Does it make you feel comfortable? What do you think? All right. So that's our first type of method. It's public. I assume that there's no confusion. Thank you very much. The next type we're going to have, trick question of the day, protected. And guess what? That's right. You're never going to use protected. Of course you're going to use it if you're building frameworks and, features out with the modules folder. But I am going on record today as saying that I cannot think of an example of a situation where you would use a protected method within a Trongate module. It's nothing against protected methods. We've got them all over the engine. I just don't think that you'll use them here, okay? I'm saving you a bit of time here. So forget about protected. The next type of method then is a method that cannot be invoked from anywhere except inside the containing module. And that, folks, is a private method. So we would say private function, and I'll just say something like send email, let's say, and just whatever, So this here cannot be invoked from anywhere, I should say outside. The proper term is outside the scope of the containing module. Remember that word scope? We talked about this in the last video. The scope means inside the curly brackets here. That's the scope, right? So in the case of something like this, it's a private method. And again, a method's a function inside a class. So if another module tries to load this, it's not going to work. If you try to go to the URL, it's not going to work. But you could go like this and say this, send email, and that'll work just fine, okay? So these are two things that are perfectly valid, and you may use them from time to time. I hope the rules are clear. All right. The next type of module that you're probably going to use quite a lot is one that can be invoked from outside of the scope of the containing module. And well, we know, actually, that's actually what I've just done right here. So can be invoked from outside the scope of the containing module. So that means URL, other modules, etc., right? Submodules, all of that stuff can be invoked from anywhere. All of that stuff is public, right? So the final one is can be invoked from outside the scope of the containing module, but not via the URL. This is the third type. And to do that, we're going to say public function, and then I'm going to say underscore, and let's just have another Ahoy, and here we go. So what does that mean? Well, I showed you at the start of the video. It means that this can be called from another module. So for example, you could go to account, you could go to this little login. I'm going to mess everything up here. We could call in module members, and then we could say members Ahoy like this. And we can invoke Ahoy. That's perfectly fine. The minute we change that to private or protected, this stops being available to other modules. Can you handle the vibe? I do hope so. So that other type would be written like that. These are the three types of method that you're going to be using with the Trongate framework. I don't care if you put your brackets here. Whilst I'm not impressed by people who use camel case with PHP. I understand that you like to go with the herd and maybe you're not as much of a free thinker as I am, but that's fair enough. Do what you need to do. But this is the three methods. So once again, my own personal coding preference, it's just a personal thing, would be to do this. Okay, and I do that because, we know it's public by default. I don't want to just type stuff just because I can. And also, I have a personal coding preference of just doing that. And if you are a purist PHP developer who's saying, well, hang on, that could be invoked from outside the scope of the containing module, you're actually correct. So maybe that's a weakness in my own coding style. I don't know. So this is the question that I'm putting to you. You've had your education, and now you decide. Do you want to have a framework, Trongate Framework, where we use explicitly public and private? We're never going to really need protected. Do you want us to start using this? It's a good time. Or do you want us to stick with this sort of shorthand method that I've been using here? Either way, we are going to retain the underscore first naming convention. We need to retain it because our framework has a very special architecture. We can do things that other frameworks cannot do. But nevertheless, that's the question. All right, the point has been laboured. I'm going to be watching the comments. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for your attention.